Hi, I'm Tim of the 1916 Company, announcing our all-new 1916 Company app. Check out our all-new community features, including wrist time, where you can log the watch you wear, how often you wear your watches, and see a graphical representation of how you use your collection. But wait, there's more, because this wrist time feature allows you to post in real time to our live feed of user wrist shots. Our community functions also include professionally moderated discussions, all sorts of views, debate, insights into what people want to say about the watches of our times, and all your favorite features are coming back, including media, editorial from Jack Forster, video from yours truly. You can continue to build your online collection and your wish list, plus all the commercial features are back. Buy, trade, and sell through the app, browse our global inventory of pre-owned and new watches. A wrist shot could begin the process of a trade or a purchase. Find the 1916 Company app on the Apple App Store and Google. Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company, and welcome to Collector Conversations. Our featured collector today is probably not new to you because she's already a prolific content creator in the watch space, but you're going to get the in-depth story today. Erika is a scientist, an influencer, a watch collector, and a travel aficionado. Erika, tell me, how did this journey start? Where did watches begin for you?
Yeah, watches began for me. It was actually a really exciting time. So I actually started in watches by getting a gift, and that was my first experience into watches. So it started with the crown. I went to source a gift for a loved one of mine, and that's when it all began because I found out about the process. Walked into an AD as one does nearby, made sure they had parking. That was very important for me early on. And I did some, little investigating and espionage on, like exactly the model, because at the time I had no clue how to talk about watches. As a gift.
Did you know what this loved one preferred? Like, did you have any kind of guidance at that point?
So that's exactly where friends and family came in. I had them do a little investigative work to find out the exact one because I knew it was super specific and it was supposed to be a very important surprise. So I didn't want to get the wrong model. So my friends and family got back to me with the exact one. And so I went into the authorized dealer, asked for it, and that's when they told me you can't just walk in and get one. There's a wait list. And explained the process very kindly to me. And that's really when I was like, there's something to this. What do you mean you can't walk into a retail store and come out with what you intended to purchase? So I did a little more investigative work, and that's kind of when I found the watch algorithm.
So what was year one? 2018 or so?
Yeah, 2018.
Now, interesting, the watch algorithm, that's how people usually kind of get pulled down the rabbit hole. At this point, I guess it was more about you and your growing passion for watches than gift giving.
Absolutely. So the gift giving is how it all started. And then obviously through the algorithm journey, I started learning more about watches. They started popping up more in my feed, and I found it increasingly interesting. And, basically exponentially, the more watches you click on, the more it shows you. So learning about the aesthetic, all the differences, the different watch brands, how to talk about them, more about the complications. Before I thought that watches just told the time and had the date. And, this kind of showed there's so much more to it that I had never seen before.
So now, in terms of where you started, you've got micro brands, you've got indie brands, you've got JDM specials, vintage on here, but you went big for your first watch. Tell us a bit about how you chose it and what it was.
I did. So my first watch was a Rolex Submariner, and I didn't initially go in for it. I actually was looking at the Oyster Perpetual, and the saleswoman at the time was wearing a Submariner herself. And I said, can I try that on? And she smiled, I wish I could recreate this smile, and took it off, and I put it on my wrist, and it just felt right. It felt like me. I love the water, so while it won't catch me diving in my dive watches because I cannot dive, but I love to be in the water, near the water. So I just felt this connection to it. And so that was the one. So my first watch was a Submariner. And again, that's already past where I was starting to learn more about watches. So I kind of liked that it had a function. And I was increasingly interested that it could tell elapsed time. And I was like, I can use this in other areas of my life, like baking, almost, not quite as a timer because it shows elapsed time, but similar in that regard.
Now that's a really cool story because I guess a lot of people are drawn in by kind of the story behind a watch. The idea of diving, adventure, maritime fun, vacations, pools, beaches. And you are Miss GMT on social media. So has this Submariner accompanied you on any adventures?
Oh, it absolutely has accompanied me on many adventures. And partly not because of the dive function of that watch, but because of the glide lock on the bracelet. So when I fly, whether I'm dehydrated or had too much salt from the pretzels they give out on the plane,
which are good,
my wrists will shrink and swell. So having that glide lock really is something that I love and appreciate about the watch. So sometimes I take that watch with me over my GMTs.
What is your wrist size, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, so I have a 6.25 inch wrist, which I feel like I'm grateful for as a female watch collector because I think I can pull off a versatile, a lot of different watches. So there's a lot of versatility there with different styles and models. And, I feel bad for women who have smaller wrists and can't pull off certain models that they would like to.
So you see, I wasn't lying about a sub fitting on a small wrist world.
Exactly. And it's so funny you say that because I really think, especially when you get into watches, everyone talks about the millimeters and the size. And to me, I found it almost doesn't matter. It's a detail that we talk about to describe the watch, but how it fits on every individual is so incredibly different. I mean, my 41 millimeter sub fits larger than this 43 millimeter Ulysse Nardin, which we'll get into in a bit.
Really good story too, because you're wearing the Otsuka Lotec No. 6, and at least on paper, this is almost a 43 millimeter watch, but the look and the fit is really compact. And again, the shape of the watch is the key to its ergonomics.
Absolutely. The shape of the watch as well as the lugs, I think, are kind of the secret key ingredient there and how they fit on each individual. These lugs make it so even though the dial and the case is really large or on the larger size, it just fits very well on the wrist.
Think wire lug Rodimir and you have about the right idea. We're jumping ahead of ourselves though. Okay, so after the sub, now to become a collector, you need a collection. So where did your collection begin? When was that second watch added?
Yeah, so actually I don't even know what the second watch was. It probably kind of morphed more into some micros and independents, which then morphed into more independent brands for sure. I probably picked up the Seiko World Time right after that or shortly after because I love travel. So once I learned what a GMT function was, I was like, I have to have one. And add one to my collection. So this was the first one that caught my eye. This is a Seiko Sun 067. The coolest part about this is even though it's quartz, it's also a kinetic movement. So if you can point it out on the back of how you kind of wind it, there's some manual aspects to it, even though it's quartz. But this is my tried and true, trusty, old steed. This watch has been with me to 6 out of the 7 continents. It is my go-to. It's endured the spice markets of Marrakesh. It's peered into the borders of North Korea at the DMZ, South Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, Europe. This is the watch that I bring with me everywhere as a world timer because it kind of flies under the radar. And also, I think it's beautiful. It can be dressed up, it can be dressed down, and it's just fun.
It's an interesting watch because a lot of people don't realize that there is something between spring drive and quartz in the world of Seiko, and it is kinetic. It is this mechanically winding quartz watch. Really cool piece, 100 meters. Have you ever taken it swimming?
I have not actually. I have not taken it swimming. I mean, it's definitely been in torrential downpour traveling, so can't really compare it to swimming, but
no, but
seen some water.
and I guess I had to ask at some point, you're Miss GMT, you have to have a dual time watch. Do you have a Rolex GMT by any chance?
Absolutely. So again, there's always been a love of the crown. That was the gateway that kind of got me into the world of horology. And so I'm always eternally grateful for that. And I always find myself coming back to the crown in various ways. So I have a Swiss only dial, 99 GMT Coke.
That's very cool. So I guess Now that you've sort of discovered the wider world of watches, Rolex is both a starting point and I guess a journey for many collectors. Along the way, you've discovered some very fascinating pieces, and one of the most interesting is that you've gravitated toward a few vintage timepieces. So take me on a little mini tour of your vintage collection here.
Yeah, absolutely. So probably the most vintage on the table would be this vintage Sherpa Jet and Enicar. And this one was kind of because as much as I love my Seiko Sun, I kind of fell in love with the aesthetic of this watch, the history of Enicar, and it really, honestly, the aesthetics attracted me most to this GMT watch.
Condition's superb too. I mean, these are the kind of lugs that suffer horrendously from refinishing. This doesn't look like it's ever been touched by a wheel.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there are signs of any polishing. I'm pretty sure it was unpolished when I purchased it, but this is my backup GMT, the Seiko Sun. I love the black dial, so it's a little bit different. I think it can be dressed up a little bit more. Still flies under the radar with the sea pearl case back, which is really fun. I always think historically, kind of with the oyster, how it meant to have that tight seal. It's kind of a similar story of how it's compressed and uses that.
And I really like that because it's always nice when you've got a watch with a solid case back to get a really special case back design. And sometimes when a movement's really rustic, I would almost prefer that. A really cool movement, I think it's an 1146, maybe an 1126 in this, but a great example of what traveling with a watch was like back in the 1960s, and still a good size to this day.
No, absolutely. The size can fit on every wrist, and that's what I love about it. It's definitely universal in that, and I love the vintage aesthetic.
Survivor too, I mean, really nice. Even looks like it's probably original hands. So a very cool piece. I mean, was this where you started with vintage?
Yes, this is actually where my first dip into the vintage world.
So now you've got your vintage travel watch with a very sporty overtone. You've also got your vintage dress watch, and this is part of a line that came out in the early 60s, but we believe that this is a early 1980s reference. Really cool, really offbeat. You gotta tell me about this right here.
Yeah, so you mentioned, traveling for watches, and I picked this up in Japan actually when I was traveling, and it caught me off guard because the dial is what struck me first. It is a checkered dial, this little protocol, and I kind of was in the market for a black tie event dress watch. So this one comes with me, when I have to get a little more dressed up or it's more of a dressy situation. The Piaget protocol is my go-to.
And just a monstrously cool watch. I mean, you've got the design of the case flank and the bezel and the dial. They all flow into one another. Ultra thin Piaget manual wind, super compact. I gotta say, do you have a feeling about what point a watch gets too small?
So no, not for me anyway. Again, I will wear anything up to a 43 millimeter Ulysse Nardin, all the way down to, I have a Rolex ladies watch from the 60s. That's a manual wind, and it's 11 millimeters thick. So that's not even the smallest watch in my collection, but it's really cool because it has the original strap and the original buckle as well. And the wear you see on it is from me. It was in pristine condition, which is why I love the Japanese culture in watches.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of wabi-sabi, where if there's one scratch, you're fine, where in America, I want it polished. This is absolutely untouched. This checkerboard cut, you couldn't reproduce this at a refinishing facility. So this really is, like you say, it's been very carefully and lovingly worn. This is an incredible little watch.
And good luck to the team in photographing it because I haven't had any luck. It is incredibly hard to photograph, but in person, it's just stunning.
And there is something very special about a gold ultra thin Piaget. This is the wheelhouse of Piaget right here. This is like to Piaget what like a sub is to Rolex.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna plead ignorance because I know a decent amount about watches. I know nothing about this. The ring watch with the extensible finger bracelet. You gotta tell me the story behind this thing.
Absolutely. So this is kind of a collaboration because there's been a lot of watch collaborations, but I feel like watch rings are few and far in between. And this one's unique because it's a Timex and House Margiela collab. So already I was kind of like, you're taking haute fashion and Timex and kind of mashing them together in such a unique, time accessory way. And what I love about it is it's super unisex because of the, kind of bracelet, I guess, if you would call it. and it fits on most people's fingers. And I really like pairing it with something that's very analog or manual because it is digital. And I think there's some fun in the contrast there. And actually, it's one of my favorite watches to take when I'm traveling like via train or subway or something like that, because you can really check the time very quickly on your fingers.
And I gotta be honest, something about this, it reminds me of a watch my dad had when I was a little kid. He had a digital quartz watch with an extensible bracelet, so from my perspective, thumbs up. All sorts of nostalgia. Very, very cool little watch. And when did you get this?
It's got a lot of love. I probably got that a year and a half ago. It sold out super quick. I think it was limited to like 150 or 200 pieces. I don't think they even like promoted it very much. I just happened to be kind of like doom scrolling my watch algorithm and saw it pop up, and I was like, I have to have that. It also, it has a matching wristwatch with a kind of bracelet that goes over the wrist a couple times. And it would have been a really great to have both of them together, but unfortunately I could only get the watch ring. I was like refreshing my tab, trying to get both with two different devices, but that's how competitive.
You could actually wear this and a watch. And let me just ask you, because this seems to be the controversy du jour on social media, how do you feel about double wristing watches?
I think there's a time and a place, and I think it depends on the individual. There's a time and a place. It's happened to me often where a friend really wants to see something, but I want to wear a watch for a different reason, whether it's outfit, whether it's who I'm going to meet there. So sometimes I do double wrist, but it's few and far in between, and I think it's whatever you're comfortable with and feel confident doing. Obviously, I think the value is something to consider too when double wristing. It definitely commands a little bit more attention from people who maybe aren't into watches, but if you show up double wristing, especially in something that's yellow gold, might get some eyes that you might not want.
So if you like the idea of double wristing to have two timepieces, but you don't want the stigma of it, this is perfect for that.
Exactly.
All right. So now you started to move towards things that were less common, vintage, smaller brands, independents, Japanese domestic market. Tell me a little bit about how you discovered the indies, because starting with Rolex, you started with the biggest name in watches.
Yes, and definitely I think it's because of their presence. So if you're new to the watch world, that definitely is kind of what hooks you in. But shortly after that, even before I kind of dabbled in vintage, Japanese independence really struck me. And partly because I travel a lot, and Tokyo happens to be one of my favorite cities that I find myself going back to frequently. So I fell in love with the Japanese culture, their aesthetic, and their approach to watchmaking and design. Everything design-wise, and even in assembly, is very intentional about their watches. So that's actually when I first found out about Otsuka Lotec, the brand. And shout out to Swiss Watch Gang. I was watching one of his videos, and that's where I first saw it. And I thought that was super fascinating because I was just getting a little bit into cars at the time, and it kind of has like a motif almost of a gauge. So that's what really hooked me, and I love the Japanese script on the dial. And of course, that's right when I was getting into other complications. So having the double retrograde of the hours and minutes is like fascinating to me, and that's what really drew me in about this watch. And I was lucky enough to find someone who was crazy enough to want to sell it, because this is well before it won the GPHG award.
Tell me a little bit about the brand, because for a lot of folks watching, this is going to be their first acquaintance with Jiro Kariyama, I should say, and Otsuka Lotec.
Yeah, absolutely. So the brand is Otsuka Lotec, and it's meant to be like that low-tech approach and design towards watches. Jiro Katayama used to design cars and is also a product designer by nature. So he always kind of had that design, wanting to build something element to him. And then he was fascinated, actually, he got gifted a small metal lathe, and that's when he was fascinated and started making watch cases, went to watchmaking school, somewhat self-taught as well, and started building his in-house modules on top of a Bosch movements, which I think is super, some people, especially in the comments, might be, not okay with that or not a fan of that.
Get over it.
Exactly. I think it's really cool. If you have a vision, and that's like your first entry on how to get it going, I find that amazing. And just seeing the diversity in the in-house modules that he's created and having his intricate design language that he's inspired by vintage, cars as well as vintage cameras, I find that endearing and heartening, and I am so glad that he did, because that's literally was what got my toes wet into Japanese independence.
And you didn't stop there. Now, I gotta be honest, since the GPHG in 2024 and the Challenge Prize victory, everyone knows Katayama for that watch. And that's probably the only Otsuka Lotec they've seen. You have two on this table alone. So tell me a little bit about this guy, because just as a lot of people are going to be hearing about the brand for the first time from you, a lot of people who know the brand are going to be learning about this watch for the first time from you.
Absolutely. So this is his newest of this year. This is called the 5 Kai, and this is a wandering hours complication. So basically how it tells the time is here on the side of the chapter ring. So there's the hours, which is there's 3 different rotating discs, and kind of as time flies, per se, it flips off of these ball bearings, which were created specifically for this watch. And it's actually one of the smallest ball bearings to ever be used in a watch today. And what I appreciate about it is, much in like the Joran fashion, if you're wearing a suit, a jacket, or a dress shirt and it's covering the cuff, you can still kind of glance and know the time without being disrespectful in a meeting.
And it's kind of cool because it's a jumper pawl system based on spring action, so it's a little bit more like the AP Star wheel than the Erver kind with Maltese cross. It's really dynamic, it's really cool, and you can see that this has a lot of really sort of rising fashion trends. You've got a glass box sapphire, you've got a monoblock case, a lot of things that are becoming really regarded in the watch space, or at least popular. The glass box in particular seems of our moment, but there's also something timelessly fun about it, and the size is a hell of a lot smaller than Gorilla, for example.
Absolutely. And I was super grateful, and this is like the power of the watch community, right? I was taking a trip to Tokyo and literally texted my friend Roy Davidoff, because I saw that he was also in Tokyo at the time, and hoping that he wasn't on his way out as I was flying in. And he said, there's actually a watch auction tonight, you should come. So literally popped off like a 15-hour flight, immediately jumped in a cab, dropped my bag at the hotel lobby, and went to a watch auction. I was tired, I was dehydrated, I was hungry. It started like pouring rain, and here I find myself at this watch auction. When I walk in the door, who's standing there? None but Jiro Katayama himself. So we got to talking, and as best as we can, there's a little bit of a language barrier, but I was able to tell him, I own, the number 6, and I love his design aesthetic and his work, and ever since we bonded, and I've loved to see his evolution in his watchmaking from the number 6, the number 7, and now into the 5 Kai.
And what's really cool too is that even though the watches themselves are not exorbitantly priced, given how interesting and original the designs are, the low production and the scarce availability outside of Japan make them really special. I think he's only making somewhere between 150 and 180 watches a year even now as a discovered talent.
Yes, potentially even less than that. He's gotten some help in watchmaking, but again, he would love to share more. It's just a capacity of having, just not enough support. So there's a lot of demand and short supply. So. And
they are Citizen Miota movements inside, so they are Japanese top to bottom. A very cool watch. All right, so not every indie brand watch has to be super expensive, and sometimes they can be both inexpensive and expensive, and Hajime Asaoka has both. Tell me about Kurono.
Yes, so this is a Kurono Tokyo. This is their 25th anniversary Jubilee EOL. EOL stands for end of life. He designed one very similar with this beautiful dial, icy blue, a couple of years prior, but that was the NOS movement. So it was a new old stock movement that they found and did a couple kind of watches with, and then this one came out, and this is the end of life for that movement. So he tweaked it a little bit and made some minute changes, but my favorite parts about this is it's so aesthetically pleasing. The beautiful chrysanthemum guilloche, there's a fan-like motif on the power reserve, the kanji text, which is what I've always appreciated about Japanese independence and what drew me into Otsuka Lotec. And my personal favorite part is hard to see to the naked eye, but the hands are, the second hand and minute hand are actually bent so that it increases the legibility of the watch.
Yeah, they're micro rolled to give them a little bit of a curve, so when you look at it from the front, they appear straight. And I think they call it Sensu, I believe, the Japanese fan-style power reserve. Don't
Correct.
be fooled by EOL. You hear EOL, I should say, end of life, and you think, oh, well, that's an end of life indicator on a quartz watch. True, quartz watches have that. The end of life here is the end of life for the movement inside, which is the 9133, which is being phased out. And so end of life for that mechanical movement. Also very cool, we got the glass box look, we've got tapered lugs, we've got a very organic aesthetic, and a black onyx cabochon on the crown.
Correct. So that's signature to this 25th anniversary Jubilee. And what I appreciate about it is that the hour markers are black as well. So the black cabochon, onyx cabochon, is meant to kind of match that aesthetic.
And miraculously, you have the same blue ostrich leg leather strap from Deluxe that I've got on my Garrick. All right. So this is just the total package. You get Asaoka's design in a Japanese-made watch with a Japanese movement, but he's known for elaborate CNC, bespoke watches, complications. Those can take years and lots of money, and this is a way to get into a turnkey Asaoka watch for survivable investment, shall we call it?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Most people in the United States have no idea what Shellman is, so you've got more than just a watch to explain the next one.
Absolutely. I feel like this is a crash course in Japanese independence.
And I'm learning too.
So this is my Shellman. This is a Grand Complication. And what I love most about it is that it is a quartz watch, but it also is a Grand Complication. So while it's a minute repeater, and yes, it's a speaker, I find that fascinating. If you're just getting into the world of watches, it is a fun watch where you can have all the complications of a perpetual calendar, a triple date, as well as a minute repeater function. And a moon phase.
And Shellman itself is an esteemed retailer in Japan with a lot of history that has associations with other independent brands, like Habring, for example, has had Shellman special editions. At heart, it is a Casio movement, so if you're familiar with something like the Campanola Grand Complication, this is almost the little brother to the Campanola Grand Comp, where you've got the different functions, albeit electronically powered, in a 38mm case.
Correct, yes. And this one's just, it's fun, right? To have all these different functions. I've always put kind of my grail when I first got into it was a minute repeater. So this is as close as I can get without spending, $100,000 on a, another Grand Complication.
I would say it's almost like a 90s era Zenith Chronomaster Caliber 410 and a Citizen Grand Comp had a child, and that child was very gifted, and this is that kid. Super cool, and a lot of fun for the money, because look, I see Patek Philippe 5270s all the time. First one of these that's crossed my desk right here. So how do you decide what you like? Some people have a roadmap, some people are impulsive. You talk about following the algorithm. How does that work?
I think the algorithm follows me back in the same regard. I collect sort of where opportunity and I guess my personality intersect. So all of these watches are just different aspects of my personality or my hobbies or things I enjoy. I enjoy travel, so there's always a GMT watch that will be with me when traveling, sometimes another watch or two. I love traveling to Tokyo and I love the Japanese culture, which is when I went down the rabbit hole, and still I'm very much in that pocket of the rabbit hole of Japanese independence. I love the design aesthetics, the attention to detail, and every watch has a story. So all of these on the table and the other watches that I have at home all have a unique story in either how I got them, what they mean to me, or how they kind of express my personality. And it looks like a lot of different things going on this tray, but all of them have their own point in my life.
What is the story behind the Grand Comp? Because we understand what a Grand Comp is, and we now know a little bit about Shellman, but how did you find that watch in the first place?
Yeah, so I first found out about Shellman through Cameron Barr from Craft & Tailored. So I ended up meeting him after my first Watches and Wonders, which was overwhelming. I went, as one does when they're in Switzerland, to have a quiet fondue, and I look up and Cameron Barr is sitting there from Craft & Tailored across the room. So when he was finished with his meal, I went up and introduced myself, and we've been longtime friends ever since. And he is the one who told me initially about Shellman because they have a beautiful Cloisonné World Timer minute repeater as well. And so I kind of have always been keeping my eyes and ears peeled for that watch, and when it comes up, because it's somewhat hard to find. They didn't make a lot of them. And I was just scrolling through the algorithm, and sometimes I'm paying attention watching and sometimes I'm just listening. And I just heard the minute repeater, I just heard the sound, and I stopped what I was doing and grabbed my phone and was like, wait, is that it? Is that the Shellman? And it happened to be. So I purchased this from Cam, and yeah, he's the one who first told me. So thank you so much, because it has brought so much joy into my life. I literally won't even tell you how many times I just deploy it and play around with it. The split chronograph function, it is just one of those watches that you have fun with.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's halfway between like a timepiece and a gadget.
Yes, yeah, for
gadget.
sure.
And I think we can all relate to that. So now tell me a little bit, I know you've got some pieces that aren't here. If there's anything that particularly comes to mind, rest assured we'll get the graphics up. Some pieces that mean a lot to you that have cool stories or cool anecdotes that you'd like to share. Go wild. We can make anything appear in post-production.
The magic of television, right? Yeah, so there's I have a vast collection. Something that I'm doing right now that I think is fun, I purchased in December. So I'm coming up, I think, almost close to the 6-month mark. But I brought my first bronze case from Kyoto, and the Old Smith bronze, and I'm seeing how it patinas over time. And that's been a really fun journey, because I wanted something that changes kind of over time, and to see how it patina. So it's been fun. I have to post an update. I just pulled it out of the safety deposit box just the other day, and so I will keep everyone updated, but I'm loving how it's patining.
Now you do work in food science, and there are some compounds that you can use to.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you
to
really
speed
want
up the process.
Are you going to do that?
No.
Okay.
I want it to be natural. I've even thought about taking it on a nice sweaty run or something to kind of get that salty moisture to get it going a little further. But I want it to be tried and true. And it's actually kind of difficult to get wrist time, amongst all the watches. I don't know if anyone else struggles with that. I wish there was a magic formula, but I try to give it even, and if I find that I'm not wearing something, quite frequently, then, it's time to move on. I think my watch collecting journey in particular is meant to be an evolution, so it might not stay here. There will always be certain pieces that have such a significance to me that I will never sell, and I actually don't even wear often, whether they're family heirlooms that were passed down, and they're irreplaceable. So I don't even want to take the risk of typically wearing them, but it's meant to be an evolution for me.
So roughly how large is the collection? Considering this is a component of it, we may come back and do a part 2. How many watches do you own?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because I feel I never have them all out at once in one place. It's probably around 35, 40. So this is just a little piece. Again, I kind of picked the buckets that mean the most to me and speak a lot about my personality. So the Japanese independence, the GMTs, dive watches. I always joke, if I had a type for watches, I think it would be dive watches. It's not my go-to necessarily, but I always end up being attracted to dive watches through and through. So I'd love to expand on that aspect of the collection a little bit more, because I have my sub, I have this. They're fun, and I feel they take on so many different aesthetics as well, and creativity is unlimited when you're talking with a sub.
It's interesting because old dive watches are kind of aspirational, not in the sense that we can't afford them. Some of them are quite accessible. It's that we always imagine being that guy on the adventure on a reef with a spear and a shark and a wreck. It's a dream that we have. A dive watch is the embodiment of that dream. How does this watch reflect that dream? Because this is Oris. We're back in Switzerland now.
Yes.
We'll come back from Japan. Tell me about your Oris.
Absolutely. So this is one of my favorite watches that I can do anything. Talking kind of one watch collection, this does it all. It comes with me anywhere. You can go from the beach in it. You can go traveling. It can be dressed up as well. This is the watch that I wear for doing almost anything. And I just spoke at my first time of Watches and Wonders a couple of years back, and it was a very scary kind of experience. It's much larger than I thought. I didn't really know many people, and I went with a goal to meet many people. And Oris is one of those brands like Josh Shanks to welcome me in and really help me in my journey early on. So to that, I love the brand. I love almost everything they do and come out with, and big supporters of Oris.
I have to say, it's always been a very approachable brand for me too. I visited them in Switzerland. They sent me home with Oris branded whiskey, which was kind of cool. Friendly folks, and a very nice watch. Whenever you've got one of the Oris vintage divers from the Divers 65 line, the Diver Heritage line, the skeuomorphic rivet bracelet, the no crown guard case, very simple but strong design.
I agree, and I think anyone can wear this watch. Again, like regardless of size, whether you're male or female, you have small wrists or large wrists, I still feel like you can pull off the diver date.
This is more of like an aspirational watch as a watch.
Absolutely.
When you're talking about a freak, any freak, now we're in a different echelon of horology. Ulysse Nardin is a very well-known name in the watch space. It's a huge nerd brand. How did you get yourself into a freak in the first place?
So I've always wanted one. Like early on in my collecting journey, I was always enamored at the thought of a freak and its capabilities. I thought it was so fun and unique, and how it tells the time and how it was assembled. Well, the R&D of the silicone escapement and silicone components, as well as just the flying carousel as it rotates and how it tells the time. And my favorite part about it is that it's not static. So every time you glance down, there's movement, there's motion, there's life in the watch. And when you're, assembling a watch movement, like that's like the component where you feel the heartbeat once you fully assemble it, and you can start to see it tick and come to life. And that's just a reminder of it for me. And this is kind of like my moody, trendy watch, right? Like, so I wear this with like a leather jacket, like a New York City night, cocktail bar, having fun, going to a concert. Like this watch is fun. And I've always loved the idea behind the Freak and how it was kind of designed. So I've always wanted one. So this is the Freak X in titanium with black PVD. And initially I thought it was gonna be like too dark and too like masculine. And I was so wrong. Like I love wearing this watch. It goes with so many different outfits and styles. And again, like it fits this like aesthetic and mood, like New York City nights. And so I absolutely love it.
You know, this is like a blacked out Ducati power cruiser. That's exactly what this is. This is absolutely awesome. And it's fun because, like you said, all of the most engaging parts of the movement are on the dial side.
Yes.
So it's like we say we'd like to wear our watches upside down. This one sort of is.
It is. And I also, on the flip side, love the exhibition case back as well. It's always fun to have one. And again, it's not a static, so every time you look down at your wrists, there's always some life to it. And I love too, because so many people have approached me and said, like, does that tell the time? Like, how do you read the time? And I always love those conversations, similar to some of the Japanese independents I have. When you first look at them, you're like, does that tell the time? What is that? And so I kind of love those types of watches as well. So the movement itself, as it rotates on the axis, is what tells the time. So it kind of flips how you tell the time on its head, which is what I love the most about it.
And a really neat watch, and again, I think a brand kind of on the rise, Ulysse Nardin, spread the word. So yes. Really neat watch. And I said this was aspirational, but we always have dreams atop dreams. There must be some sort of Grail watch or roadmap or something you'd love to own in the future, some experience you haven't had, or maybe an experience tied to the watch that you'd like to have.
Yeah, so I think most of us have a Grail watch. I have like a list ongoing of things that I would love to own at some point in my life. But again, because opportunity strikes when it does, I don't have any like need to just immediately go out and kind of buy those watches. So I kind of wait for opportunity, but there are a lot of Grail pieces and a lot of them aren't necessarily just like expensive. Some of them are hard to get, and some of them, even if they're not hard to get, just mean something to me. And sort of silly, like one of them is just a simple Datejust, but because of its unique dial, it may be a safe queen right now, because it was limited, it's old, and it might not mean anything to anyone else, but to me, this dial resembles prosciutto ham. And since I'm a food scientist, like every time I look at it, I smile. But a beautiful bloodstone Jasper dial is definitely maybe one that I'll have one day.
That is an interesting, hamming it up with Rolex, so to speak. All right, well, then let's talk a bit about your alter ego. You are Miss GMT, and your social media presence is large and growing. Talk to me about how you kind of got started on that journey, because that's an entire different step. That's almost like a lateral from watch collecting. Now you've become like an influencer. How did that start?
Yeah, so there was no intent to be an influencer when I first started. So again, being a food scientist, I don't have a lot of exposure into the watch community because I don't work in it and didn't live in it. So I was seeking community and people to kind of talk shop with and get more exposure. And so I started my page also because my Instagram was like totally just, my feed was all watches. So it was kind of nice to kind of create its own kind of profile for it as a means of organization in and of itself. But that's really what I started to kind of get community and meet more people, like-minded people, which, you know, then I started going to more watch events once I started meeting more people, which then you get more exposure of different watches. And then again, it just furthers you into the rabbit hole of what you want to collect, new brands that you've never heard of or models that you've seen before. And that's, I think, the beauty and the magic behind Horology is the watch community. I'm super grateful for it. Again, there's certain brands like Ulysse Nardin and Oris that like, they noticed me, you know, when I was really small and like believed in me and helped me, you know, kind of grow. And I've always loved their watches. Like I was there for their watches and they took a keen and big supporters early on. And, you know, the second part and approach to creating my channel is because I really want to, you know, demystify that it's a male-dominated hobby. And if you're a female and you're even slightly interested, you know, it can seem intimidating at first, A, because it's very male-dominated, and B, because, you know, you might not know how to talk about a watch or what the watch, you know, is on the table. But I want to kind of demystify some of that and debunk it and empower more women to join the hobby, you know, maybe with some more basic terminology that some people might laugh at, like, why is she even covering that? But it's kind of an entry point. So that's kind of my goals of my page, and it still is growing. It shocked me how quickly it grew. But again, it's allowed me a lot of opportunities into the watch community, which has just furthered like my collection and approach to watches.
Really cool. And you know, I know some guys who have these gigantic collections of $100,000 watches, and they sit in the safe and they take them out, they look at them for a few minutes every once in a while. It's great, they have an incredible collection, but there's no social component, there's no interaction, there's no chance to like make common cause with other people who feel the same way. If you're not getting out, at least online, and meeting with other watch people, a meeting of the minds, if not in person, you're not getting the most out of this hobby. So men, women, anyone out there, reach out. Sometimes that means starting your own social media. Sometimes it means going down the rabbit hole with the algorithm. But it's a big world, and it's best to embrace it. Erika, where can people find you?
You can find me at Watch Miss GMT on Instagram. There's definitely hopes to kind of expand in other platforms. You know, we're in the hobby of time, and I wish I could just make more time appear. You know, I think I need a watch that has more than 24 hours on it, if that's possible. If any watchmakers are out there, I would love that. So for right now, Watch Miss GMT is definitely the best place to either send me a message and chat, talk shop, or see what I'm up to.
Very cool. So we're gonna have to do a part 2, and until next time, time out.
Thank you.